I had dinner and drinks at the bar of my favorite alehouse, a cozy establishment with wooden walls decorated with antique signs and a collection of beer steins from around the world. The light from the copper lamps diffusely illuminated the space, creating a soft and warm atmosphere. I was about to finish my third glass of craft beer with a rich hop aroma when I heard a familiar male voice say my name with a hint of hesitation. It sounded from the entrance as if jerking me out of a pleasant state of half-sleep and serene relaxation. Turning around, I saw one of my former clients heading towards me. He was a middle-aged man with a tired face and a slightly shabby jacket, who approached me with a noticeable amount of excitement. When he was nearby, he quietly but confidently asked, "Peter, do you have a minute?" At that moment, I automatically glanced at my table. My steak with a golden brown crust, framed by aromatic baked potatoes, was just about ready to be served. Feeling my already growing hunger, I couldn't help but look irritated and looked him straight in the eyes. I never liked being interrupted while eating, especially after a long day at work when I just wanted to enjoy my dinner in peace. "If it's quick," I said briefly, hoping to quickly get rid of this unwanted conversation. The man hesitated for a second, but still continued, "It's about the unpaid part of my bill. The new restaurant just opened, and things are not going well yet." His voice trembled, as if it was not easy for him to admit it. Not wanting to go into details, I decided to cut him off mid-sentence. "Look, your name is Ray, right?" I asked indifferently, hoping that this would at least show my minimal attention to his problems. "No, my name is Art," he corrected me with noticeable awkwardness, as if it was important to him that he at least be remembered correctly. "Well, Art," I said, lowering my voice a little, "I don't directly deal with these things, and frankly, I don't know what you're talking about at all. If it's important, call my office on Monday." With these words, I calmly pulled out a business card from my pocket and handed it to him. I hoped this would be enough to put him off so I could get back to my dinner. However, Art, still determined, continued, "Listen, I have a debt of a little over $4,000, and I would like to settle it right now. I don't want to lose my new business. It has great prospects." There was desperation in his voice, and his eyes, although anxious, shone with hope that I would help. I looked at him with a slight grin, realizing that his situation was hardly as critical as he described it. "4,000 and a little more can wait until Monday," I replied, feeling like I was in control of the situation. "But if you have this amount with you now, we can settle everything right away. I will write you a receipt, and that will end your worries. Believe me, I am an honest businessman and never wanted to harm anyone. So relax and enjoy the weekend." With these words, I extended my hand to him, expecting that he would accept my gesture, although I was not sure that he had the money with him. At this time, feeling the aroma of roasted meat, I mentally returned to the anticipation of dinner, hoping that this conversation would soon end. "Mr. Swift, this is Hammery," he introduced, and a tiny Asian girl came out from behind him. "Should we move to our table?" I looked at the bartender and said, "Scott." He replied, "I will bring it when everything is ready." And I got up, and we sat at a table in the corner with their glasses of water. "This is my wife," he said, and then quietly added, "a mail-order bride, if you know what I mean. If you agree to write off the rest of my debt, she will be yours for, say, a week." And I felt anger overcome me. When I looked at her to see her reaction, she immediately looked down. She looked too young, and I asked in a firm tone, "How old are you?" When Ray or Art, or whatever his name was, tried to answer, I interrupted him. I asked her. She looked up. 25, she answered barely audibly, and lowered her head again to the table. "They have to be over 21 years of age to come here for an arranged marriage like we have, through immigration and all that," he added, and she started rummaging through her purse and pulled out her Florida ID, which did prove that she's 25. I looked to my left and saw Scott walking toward us with my plate and fresh beer and said, "Mr. Scott, false alarm, I'll go back to my place at the bar. Those two are leaving." I took her hand, looked him in the eye and said, "You have my business card. Call the office on Monday and ask for the accounts department." and I returned to my place at the bar. Problems? Scott asked. No, just some idiot trying to mix my relaxation with business, I replied. It's always like that, he replied. Cool little Asian thing. And although I completely agreed with him, I did not answer. During the meal and the subsequent 3 dark craft beers, I couldn't stop thinking about her offer. But in my head, I knew that this was a legally dangerous situation, and considering that it could be a scam, I decided to forget everything. I paid the bill, gave Scott $20, and walked to my car. As soon as I started the car, I heard a Bluetooth signal, and when I answered, I heard Art's voice. Mr. Swift, this is Art. And as I was about to end the call, he added, Listen, I just got home and found a notification about the collection in your mail. Sir, could you at least reconsider your decision and listen to me? We could at least agree on payments. Please. And I thought, look, let me think. Call me tomorrow morning, we'll talk. And without waiting for his answer, I ended the call. At 4 in the morning, when the city was still buried in darkness and silence, I was already in the gym. The area around me seemed half asleep, but this was the time when I felt most collected. Morning workouts became a ritual for me, a time when I could clear my mind and energize my body before a long day. I started by warming up on the treadmill, feeling my muscles gradually wake up, and then moved on to heavy exercises. Every movement was clear, measured, as if I was following a well-known rhythm. At this hour, there were no distractions in the gym, just me, dumbbells, and an endless series of repetitions. After an hour of intense training, I headed to the shower. The hot water pleasantly relaxed the muscles, washing away fatigue and sweat. Clean and refreshed, I left the gym feeling like my morning had not been in vain. By 5:45, before the city had even fully woken up, I was sitting on the cozy pool terrace, holding a small cup of espresso in my hands. The strong, rich taste was invigorating, and the cool morning air slightly stung the skin. I made myself comfortable in an easy chair and began to watch the sunrise. The sky gradually brightened, moving from dark blue to delicate pink and orange hues, as if someone was slowly stretching out the dawn palette. The sun's rays slowly made their way through the clouds, painting the horizon with golden light and reflecting on the smooth surface of the pool. In this perfect, almost meditative moment, the silence was interrupted by the sharp ringing of a cell phone. The sound was unexpected, as if someone had suddenly broken into my privacy. Irritation instantly washed over me as soon as I recognized the first few digits of the number that appeared on the screen. This was the second time in the last 24 hours that this person tried to call me. I definitely remembered this number, and besides, it was too early for any business conversations, and my morning calm was not conducive to such intrusions. The bell seemed to burst into this moment of peace, destroying it with its intrusiveness. The accumulated irritation spilled out at that moment as soon as I pressed the answer button. Without even giving myself time to think about who could be on the other end, I said sharply, almost aggressively, "Man, can't you just leave me alone?" There was obvious annoyance in my voice, and I was ready to hang up the call again, when suddenly a soft female voice with subtle excitement was heard at the other end of the line. The strong accent gave her speech an unusual tone, causing me to tense up for a moment and listen. "Mr. Peter, this is Hammery from yesterday. Can I talk to you?" she said, almost apologetically. These words instantly cooled my ardor. I recognized her voice. It was the same woman with whom I had dealt the day before. Her accent was thick, but there was a warmth in her voice, even a slight pleading, that couldn't help but touch you. Memories of yesterday's conversation flashed through my head, and I suddenly felt a pang of guilt for my rude treatment. Wanting to make sure it wasn't a setup and she wasn't being pressured, I asked, "Are you alone?" "Not in the house, Mr. Peter, but in this room, yes. My husband is sleeping upstairs," she replied, and from the tone of her voice I believed her, but remained cautious. "How can I help you?" I asked, waiting. "I'm the one who can help you, Mr. Peter. Please, let's sort this out," she asked. "Are you in danger?" I asked in response to her boldness. "It's only because we might lose our business that we put everything into it," she replied. "Hammery, huh? Am I saying your name correctly?" I clarified. Yes. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. I want to understand everything clearly before I make a decision. I told her this, but most of all I wanted to hear the words from her, in case it was some kind of setup. Mr. Peter. Her voice was firm and clear. Is it possible to meet to discuss this in person? To say I wasn't interested would be a lie. Any man in a similar situation would be interested in this, and male nature forces him to at least think about it, even if he did not see her. But I did. I remembered that she looked to be less than 5 feet tall, a petite girl, slender, with round, voluptuous breasts and an athletic build, and my mind and emotions began to go crazy after I heard that question. There's a cafe on Madison Avenue near St. Armand Circle. Do you know it? I asked. I'll just be heading there in an hour to pick up something from the office. I lied and waited for her answer. I'll find him, say at 7 o'clock. She replied, and the moment I ended the conversation, I had a feeling of regret. Why drag out all this, I thought. This whole situation is embarrassing, and what Art proposed and how he did it is disgusting. He's a petty scoundrel and deserves to be taught a good lesson, I thought. But I still knew that I would go to this meeting. I opened the laptop, went into the office files, and checked 3 clients who were in debt. The 2 were only a few days overdue, but I walked into the cafe at about 10 minutes to 7, spoke with Roger, the owner, and saw Hammery sitting at a corner table facing the door and looking straight at me. She was much prettier than I remembered her from the night before, so I excused myself, walked over and sat next to her, keeping an eye out for any other customers who might be listening in on our conversation, and asked, "Where's Art?" She looked at me in surprise and answered, "At home." I said, "This is your meeting. I agreed to see you at your request, so tell me, how can I help?" She answered in a quiet, almost apologetic voice that had a hint of worry, but was still soft, as if she was choosing her words very carefully, trying not to irritate me. "Mr. Peter," she began with a slight tremble, but continued more confidently, "you know our situation. Every penny we make goes back into the business, to maintain it, to keep it afloat." Her words echoed in my head as a reminder that small businesses rarely thrive without constant struggle. Her voice, so warm and feminine, enveloped me, although she was clearly trying to be delicate and not push. It added a personal touch to her words, as if she was truly seeking understanding as well as benefit. "You heard my husband's proposal," she continued, emphasizing that they were both united on this issue. "It's mine, too. Couldn't you at least take a look at it?" Her intonation was quiet, but there was an urgent request in it. She was asking for help, but she did not want to sound desperate. There was a mixture of vulnerability and determination in her voice. She is clearly accustomed to the fact that she has to fight for every chance, for every step forward. "Look, I took the opportunity to check everything out. With interest and late fees," I explained. "Now your debt is about 5,000. If I had such a desire, I could buy many of the things you offer me with that kind of money, professional women. What do you think?" And she just sat there, looking down at the table. Feeling a little guilty for using such a sharp tone to break the awkward silence, I asked her, "Do you ever smile?" And she just looked at me, and I felt my heart clench a little. I called the waiter to pay her bill and invited her to walk with me so we could talk a little more privately, and we left the cafe. "What exactly are you willing to do for me?" I asked. Without hesitation, she replied, "Anything." "Are you sure you are not in danger from your husband or anyone else because of this situation?" I asked again. She shook her head and said, "Yes, I'm sure." "Do you drive a car?" I asked. "Yes, I drive," she replied with a clear hint of offense at this question. "And are you willing to sell yourself to me to pay off this debt?" I asked directly. I needed to know, and I wanted to hear it from her, and judging by the thin sportswear, I could tell that she definitely wasn't wearing a listening device. "Mr. Peter, I'm not cheap. We're just in such a desperate situation." By then, we were already standing next to my SUV. "What do you drive?" I asked her. "Am I going?" she answered with a question. "Yes, where is your car parked?" I asked. "Art gave me a lift. "He's waiting at our restaurant when I call," she replied. I opened the passenger door of my Escalade and said, "Get in." As I helped her sit up, I couldn't help but admire her long, shiny black hair, the gentle curve of her back, the way her cute little firm butt peeked out through her tight gray capri pants, and overall her petite and very attractive figure. I walked around the car, got behind the wheel, and as I was buckling up, I heard myself say, "If I agree to this, when and where?" She replied, "If you can take me to our house so I can pick up a few things, we can start right away." And as I pulled out of the parking lot, she said, "At the next intersection, turn left." Feeling a little more confident now, I told her, "If I do go for it, I expect everything, and I mean absolutely everything, no exceptions." While I was waiting for her reaction, she turned on the phone and told someone who could only be Art that everything was settled. I called the office and left the accountant a detailed voicemail saying that I had agreed to a partial payment plan in the form of certified checks and that I would bring the first one in on Monday. I looked at Hammery and said, "Don't forget to take your swimsuit." And I started debating whether to take her to my home in Oyster Bay when she got her things together, or whether to book us into one of the beach hotels in Sarasota Bay. Realizing that I was intentionally going to drag this out for as long as I could, I decided to let it go and take her home. I was wondering how best to spend our first day together, thinking about going for a swim, having dinner, and having a slow, quiet evening to take it all in, when she suddenly said, "Braces." Not understanding what this means, "Excuse me," was my answer. "I have braces," she announced, and when she turned and smiled for me to see them, I noticed it for the first time, a thin, transparent strip on her teeth, which apparently made her shy to smile. Lord, she's clearly not selfish, I thought. 15 minutes later, I pressed a button on the overhead console, and we watched as the large iron gates to Oyster Bay slowly opened. A moment later, we were driving down the winding driveway to my house. "Mr. Peter," she exclaimed, "wow, it's beautiful, right on the water, and that pool." Proud of my home, I began to describe it to her with undisguised satisfaction, feeling a slight self-confidence creeping into my voice. 6,500 square feet of pure South Florida lifestyle, I said, emphasizing every word as if this house were the embodiment of my success and work. I imagined her conjuring up the wide, bright spaces filled with the comfort and luxury that I had achieved. "And this is only part of it," I added, raising my chin slightly, as if I wanted to emphasize that the most interesting things were yet to come. When you factor in the outdoor kitchen with grill and spacious living space on the deck, where I spend a lot of time, plus the guest suite above my garage, the space increases significantly. My face lit up with a wide smile because I was sure that my words would make an impression. The house was more than just a place to live. It was a real refuge where one could enjoy life to the fullest. Spacious interior rooms with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows connected to an outdoor space where the South Florida sun gently warmed everything around. I was enjoying the description, feeling like I was the owner of my little corner of paradise. But then another thought occurred to me, more personal, with a hint of flirtation, and without hesitation I added, "Do you like steak?" I asked, as if inviting her into this ideal world, where everything is arranged for pleasure and enjoyment. The question was simple, but it hinted at something more, an invitation to share the moments of peace and comfort that I had created for myself in this house. "Very," she replied, and I led her through the main kitchen on the first floor and showed her the general layout of the house. I opened the door to the guest bedroom, revealing a spacious room filled with soft light streaming through the large windows, and told her, "You can leave your things here." The room was decorated tastefully, with pastel colors, a comfortable bed with clean white sheets, and a small, cozy sitting area with a leather armchair and coffee table. On the bedside table, there was a lamp with warm, diffused light, creating an atmosphere of calm and comfort. I wanted her to feel at home, although inside I was full of anticipation and subtle excitement. When I left her there, I headed to my own bedroom. The spacious room overlooking the ocean exuded cool elegance. I kicked off my shoes and relaxed on the bed for a moment, feeling the fatigue of the day slowly fade away. Then I unhurriedly undressed, threw my clothes into the laundry basket, and took out my favorite swimming trunks from the closet. They were comfortable and already a little faded, like old friends you feel comfortable with. Over them, I put on my old Marina Jack's t-shirt, which I bought a long time ago during one of my trips to the coast. It was made of soft, worn cotton and always brought back warm memories of days spent on a yacht at sea under the scorching sun. Having prepared myself, I headed to the kitchen. There was cleanliness and order, which I always appreciated. I took out my knife and cut two excellent New York steaks with precision, juicy and thick cuts from meat that had been hanging in my dry aging room for several weeks now. This process made it flavorful and tender, perfect for an evening on the grill. Nearby lay even more rare delicacies, marbled pieces of Kobe, which I saved for special occasions, but today my choice fell on New York steaks. I lovingly sliced them, feeling each piece literally melt under the knife. I then selected two large potatoes, washed them thoroughly, and wrapped them in foil to grill later. Everything was ready to create a real culinary masterpiece. Walking out onto the terrace, where the fresh evening air pleasantly blew across my face, I headed towards my massive grill. I first turned it on to clean mode to warm up and clean the grates, and then lit the fire, watching as the flames began to greedily consume oxygen. With every step, I felt the anticipation grow. The evening promised to be perfect. When I heard the terrace door open, I looked and Hammery asked, "Mr. Peter, can I help you with anything?" I replied, "Yes, first of all, please forget about Mr. and just call me Peter." Then he added, "I was going to make us a salad, but I'm afraid my romaine has seen its best." To my surprise, she offered to see what she could do with it, and whatever it was, when she brought it in, it looked great. She found dishes in the cabinets of my indoor kitchen and set the table on the terrace while I put the potatoes on the grill. I asked her to select a bottle of red wine from the wine refrigerator next to my Sub-Zero refrigerator. When she came out with the selected bottle, carrying two glasses, I asked if she had brought a swimsuit, and she actually smiled at me and nodded. Smile, I thought. This is the first time, and I suggested that she go and change clothes. When the potatoes were done, I barely fried the steaks, poured in some wine to let it breathe a little, and when I heard the door open again, I looked in her direction. I froze like James Kamai at the hearing to prevent my jaw from dropping. When she noticed my gaze, she simply stopped and looked at me. She looked incredible in her white bikini. This image seemed to highlight every curve of her petite body, making her even more attractive. The bikini clung tightly to her slender figure, creating a feeling of purity and innocence that contrasted with how revealingly it accentuated her curves. Her skin, pale and smooth as porcelain, seemed almost unreal against the backdrop of the bright sunlight, which only enhanced her exquisite beauty. Every line of her body was neat and graceful, as if she had stepped out of a painting where the artist was trying to capture an ideal. Particularly eye-catching was her stunning cleavage, highlighted by the soft cotton top she layered over her bikini. The fabric of the top, delicate and translucent, only added mystery to her image, covering but not hiding. The breasts, lush and perfectly rounded, seemed to be the living embodiment of femininity and seduction. Every time she moved, the top rose slightly, creating slight hints, causing the gaze to involuntarily linger on this beautiful silhouette. Her image, so simple and at the same time bewitching, literally drove me crazy. She exuded confidence and natural beauty that was hard not to succumb to. The white color of her swimsuit only emphasized the contrast with her pale skin, creating the effect that she was glowing from within. Her long hair fell loosely over her shoulders, gently blown by the evening breeze, giving her even more charm. "Sorry, Hammery," I finally said, and then, before I could change my mind, "You're amazing," came out of my mouth. And for the first time since we left the cafe, a strong animalistic anticipation settled deep within me. I watched as she tilted her head slightly in approval of my verbal compliment, and we sat down, ate dinner, and exchanged a few words about my house, answering her many questions. She looked at my pool with obvious interest, asking questions about how I was able to design it, so that it looked like its edges merged with the waters of the bay. Her gaze slid over the smooth, mirror-like surface of the pool, which seemed to continue beyond the horizon, connecting with the surface of the sea. This optical miracle always aroused the admiration of guests, but her genuine curiosity, as well as her attention to detail, was a special pleasure. When she noticed this architectural feature, her eyes lit up with admiration, and she asked how exactly I was able to create such an effect. I felt flattered by her interest and did not hesitate to share the details. This actually wasn't the easiest project, I began with a slight smile, enjoying being able to tell my story. When I bought this property, everything looked completely different here. The pool, like the entire backyard, had to be completely redone. I wanted to create a feeling of endless space, so that standing on the terrace or swimming in the pool, you could feel like you were on the edge of peace, and the water went straight into the bay. She listened intently, absorbing every word, and her admiration only intensified when I explained how I had to think through every element from the height of the terrace to the angle of the water in the pool. Everything you see today is the result of many months of work and careful planning, I added with a slight pride in my voice, glancing at my ideal work. Her impression was obvious. She was delighted with the fact that it was all created by my hands, with the way every detail, from the outdoor kitchen to the pool, was conceived and executed with precision and taste. "It's beautiful, I feel you and your soul in this house," she said. "But there is no woman's hand," she added, more in the form of a question than a statement. "That's because, other than my cleaning lady and maybe a couple of realtors, you're the only one I've let in here since I bought it about 20 years ago," I explained. She looked at me with slight concern and asked, "Don't you have a girlfriend? Or do you never date?" "It happens," I replied. "But I have a sailboat anchored in Sarasota Bay next to Marina Jack's, and I recently inherited another house in Colonial Gables. If it's something serious, we usually end up there." I didn't explain it very carefully. The day was pleasantly warm, the sun gently warmed the skin, and the light breeze coming from the bay gave freshness and created the feeling of a perfect summer evening. We were sitting on the terrace, immersed in an atmosphere of complete relaxation, when I found myself watching her. She sat opposite me, holding a glass of chilled white wine. The light from the setting sun played on the edges of the glass, reflecting with golden reflections, and the wine in her glass seemed to shimmer like liquid amber. She slowly sipped the wine, as if savoring every sip, and at that moment her face was full of calm and pleasure. Her eyes were half closed, and a barely noticeable smile played on her lips, as if she was enjoying not only the wine, but every moment of this serene day. I watched as she slowly tilted her head back, letting her long hair fall freely over her shoulders. The sun's rays softly illuminated her face, making her skin seem to glow. The moment was almost cinematic, the perfect combination of beauty, tranquility, and elusive charm. Her light movements, seemingly effortless and graceful, created an atmosphere of absolute comfort. It seemed that she was enjoying not only the company, but also the moment itself, plunging deeper into it every minute. There was a light aroma of flowers and the freshness of the bay in the air, creating an ideal atmosphere around us that we did not want to interrupt. "We'll leave the dishes for now," I said. "I know that swimming right after eating is not recommended, but I like to swim in shallow water for a bit to relax after a big lunch. Would you like to join?" And I took off my t-shirt. She placed her small, soft hand in my big one, and we walked past the spa, down the steps into the 4-foot deep water. Although my pool is always heated, I prefer to keep it in the mid-70s during the summer. For me, it's the perfect balance, water cool enough to feel refreshing, but not too cold to be uncomfortable. I love the refreshing coolness of a pool, especially on hot days when you come home from an intense run or workout, sweaty and tired. I don't really like the idea of immersing myself in warm water that feels almost like a bath. It kind of defeats the purpose of having a pool, especially during the hot summer months. At such moments, you want something invigorating to feel how water awakens every cell of the body, giving a new charge of energy. For relaxing warmth, I have a shower there. I can allow myself to stand under the hot streams as long as I want, washing away fatigue and tension. For me, a pool is a place where you can freshen up, literally plunge into coolness after a stuffy day or strenuous physical activity. It's like a personal sanctuary where you can shake off accumulated fatigue and truly come alive. As she sank into the water, she turned around, walked towards me, and put her arm around my waist. I whispered in her ear, "Listen, you don't have to do this. We'll figure something out." She whispered back, "No, Peter, I want it." My Oyster Bay home is in an exclusive gated community with only a few homes, and although my outdoor shower, outdoor kitchen, lounge area, pool, and spa treatments are partially enclosed, they are still open to the rear of the property, opening directly onto the water, so I always exercise caution. "Are you sure? Are you shaking?" I asked quietly. "Damn it, Swift, where does this pity come from?" I asked myself. "Just take it and do it," my body told me. "I'm a little cold," she replied, and I realized that her lack of body fat probably made her really cold. Taking a few steps up from the water, we grabbed our wine and plunged into the hot, bubbling water of my spa. "This feels so good," she purred, nestling under my shoulder. We were talking when the timer ran out and the jets turned off. As the bubbles began to quickly disappear, she said, "I think it's time to take a shower." When we stood up, I handed her her top, adjusted the front of my swimming trunks, and said, "You don't have to go inside." I led her a few steps to the private tropical patio just off my master bedroom, where I installed two free-standing Calais bathtubs opposite several shower heads mounted directly on the side of the house. South Florida is a magical wonderland. There's no need to winterize anything, and let me tell you, there's nothing better than a private outdoor shower when the weather permits. And on the Gulf Coast, it's 90% of the year. It was time for Hammery Wife when I stood back and opened the valve to let the water heat up. And when I opened the small waterproof cabinet and handed her the shower gel and a fresh folded towel, she smiled again. After taking a shower, we had sex. After about 30 minutes, I was lying on my back, very content, and she turned to me, put the right side of her soft face on my chest, and hugged me with her smooth right arm. I didn't know what to say. Within a few hours, Art's first sentence made me angry. So I finally decided to just quietly sneak away into the shower when she spoke. "Peter, what do I need to stay with you?" And I couldn't answer. Somewhere in the middle of these last few hours, the thought crossed my mind. But at 58 years old, I have developed a lifestyle that, frankly, has no place for any woman. The second my brain decided to bring her to this house, I knew it was a bad move. My boat, my other home in Sarasota, or even a hotel room would be a smart move, because for many years this home has been my personal sanctuary. But now this is just a hindsight. Finally, when the rush of surprise and shock from this innocent little question had subsided, "What about Art?" I asked. It seemed like the only question I could ask, but I didn't get an immediate answer. When she pulled the crumpled towel back over herself, I realized she was heading to the shower in the guest room. I returned to my room, dressed in a pair of light gray dress pants and a new black sweatshirt, and as I was threading my belt through the loops, I heard her ask, "What do I look like?" I turned around and saw an Oriental beauty dressed in a tight, sparkly turquoise dress with a bulging Oriental print on one side, the highest heels to match, glowing white skin, and before I could stop my mouth from saying it, "Hammery, you can stay here with me as long as you wish." And as her face lit up, I asked, "Are you okay with Ruth Chris? Or can we go to Tommy in the Bahamas or even the ale house?" I wanted to show her off, have a nice meal, drink a little, and then I knew I would get her back and have sex with her again. Around the time we left my gated community, we pretty much settled on Ruth Chris for dinner. I knew we had a lot to talk about, a lot to think about, and I was pretty sure there would be some fallout with her husband Art, because Hammery's visit with me had turned into a permanent stay. I wasn't worried about the fact that Art was impossible to handle, but about the trouble his defiant behavior could bring to his mail-order fiancée. Oh well, I thought to myself, I'm not going to ruin our evening together now with all this. Ruth Chris always handles me impeccably at dinner, and when the manager, Tanya, mentioned that I had come in, Chef West came out and greeted me and, introducing himself as Hammery, told me that he had just received some very large shrimp that he would bring. He would like to prepare an appetizer for the two of us, and that he would personally cut my signature New York stripe, smile, hand Hammery the menu, and take our wine list, instructing our waiter which bottles to bring to our house. Our conversation was pleasant. I found it vibrant and quite cheerful. The appetizer was exceptional and Hammery settled on the giant lobster, and the entire meal was extremely enjoyable, so by deciding not to bring it up, I pushed aside the nagging thought of the impending conflict with Art. Besides, I thought, I can always take her on a long boat ride. After we ate, and she got her little tin-foil swan from the leftover lobster, we sat at the bar and had a nightcap and talked a little with the other couple, and basically just had a good time. On the way home, Hammery seemed more open, happier, and much more talkative than on our first trip to see me, and I jokingly thought to myself, Swift, I hope you haven't created a monster. But she was too cute to even think about it. When we entered, she put away the rest and went to the guest closet, change into something more comfortable. She told me, I went to my room, hung up my clothes, took off my panties, and put on clean silk boxers. Walking out into the large room, I felt the effect of my booker from Chris's bar, but settled on something else. Hell. I thought, I deserve this. I poured it, sat down in my favorite soft leather chair, and, debating whether to sit by the pool and end the evening with a good cigar, watched as she entered the room. Her long black hair was pulled back and pinned up, and she was wearing a long, tight, soft cotton, I guess you could call it, nightgown. She walked towards me gracefully with a pillow under her arm and looked attractive. Very attractive. We made love. After sharing and finishing my drink, she went to the guest room, got a toothbrush, I turned off the TV and lights, and she followed me to my bedroom. We brushed our teeth, gargled, washed our face, and she climbed into bed with me as if she had been doing this for years. As she pressed herself against me, she seemed to just fit like a missing piece of an expensive puzzle, and I wanted to fight the thoughts of her having a negative impact on my lifestyle while I tried to find something wrong with this new device. But I couldn't do anything at all, because everything about it was just too damn right. As she fell asleep, I couldn't help but ask myself, I wonder if she'd be willing to share my friends K. James and Dunbar sexually with me sometimes. And as I savored the sweet scent of her hair, felt the pleasant warmth of her small body, and listened to the peaceful sounds of her breathing, I knew deep in my soul that she would really do this. The past month with Hammery has been fun, and every day I would come home from the office, and she would greet me at the door in nothing but a short, thin silk robe, washing me and satisfying me before sitting down to a home-cooked dinner that she had cooked herself. I was sure I'll never get tired of it, but as sexy as it may seem, I was starting to feel a little suffocated at times. Never let yourself overuse this Swift. I told myself that day when she followed me to my room, and I wondered if this submissiveness truly stemmed from her culture, or if it was some part of a dark conspiracy, an attempt to provide a greater comfort zone by exploiting her submissive sexual prowess to take advantage of me. Swift, I reasoned, you are too experienced to do this. But still, there was something gnawing at me in the back of my mind, a sense of danger trying to somehow balance the constant pleasure she gave me. In any case, this nagging worry about how some of these women try to improve their old-world lifestyle by coming to America to get married, divorced, and receive half or more of their new ex-husband's life accomplishments pales in comparison to the constant pleasures which she was more than willing to provide to me. But then again, all my possessions are protected by law, and she is here of her own free will. Protégé will never become my wife, after all. We have an understanding. I thought to myself. I made it clear to her that her husband's debt to me was obvious and that she could leave at any time. So I put those thoughts out of my mind because after this long, hard, hot day, I was the one to take advantage. It was hot that day, and although I spent most of the morning at my desk, I had an off-site meeting with city works and zoning engineers that day in that heat, followed by a hot drive home. She asked, Would you rather go for a swim first? After, I answered strictly. What did you do today? I asked. Were you okay? Oh yes, thank you. She replied. I used the treadmill, did some stretching around the house, went for a swim, made dinner, and then greeted you myself. And with a hint of curiosity in her voice, she added, Don't forget to call back. Due to the intensity of the sex with Hammery, Kay was completely out of my mind, and when I tried to get up and go get my phone, she jumped up and followed me. When she came out, she smiled, handed it to me, came back and sat down facing me. I just sat and looked at the phone, and, carefully choosing my words and wondering what to do, she openly asked, Is this about me? I looked into her beautiful black eyes and replied, Only if you want it. Then I added, I have a friend in Boston who spends the winter here, and we enjoy many of the same things together that you and I enjoy. Hammery, although it's not winter, I was thinking about inviting her. Well, to share these things with us. You're suggesting we enjoy sex with her, right? She asked, and I guessed that this question was only asked for clarification, because she did not show any real negative expression in response to this vague, jumbled sentence. Yes, Hammery. I replied, if you're ready to do this, you don't have to make a decision until you have the opportunity to meet her. But if you feel like you might not like it, please tell me now before I do. This call, I answered with alarm. She said, sure, call. And without thinking, I clicked recent calls and clicked the last one, Kay James. Kay replied, hey, Peter. Kay, sorry, I was busy with something when you called. I looked at Hammery and winked. Knowing you, I can only imagine. Kay replied, and by the sounds of it, I can tell you're having a good time. In the future, you will have to hang up before you put down the phone. The sounds of what you were doing made me hot. And she laughed. Listen, the reason I called, I was just thinking about you, so I decided to call. That's all. I hope I didn't spoil anything. She said something strange. Without giving in to your curiosity. No, on the contrary, I was thinking about contacting you. I was thinking about taking my boat out again and wondered if you could go away for a long weekend and join me. I explained. Hammery smiled and nodded. Before I could ask, Dunbar has already started classes, and she won't be able to join us on this trip, but I'd like to take you up on your offer. Let me see when I can book a flight, and I'll call you. Listen, Kay, before I let you go, I want to tell you something frankly. I have a wonderful protege I'd like you to meet, and I was wondering if you would mind if I asked her to join us. And I waited a little longer for her answer than I expected. Well, Peter, when you first asked, I was kind of hoping to be alone with you on this trip. Protege, she asked, I think, this could be fun. I can send you a photo of her. I proposed, and I knew she didn't quite expect me to be so open about her lifestyle over the phone, and I found myself hoping I hadn't done anything to ruin our relationship. Please. She answered and went to the functions on my phone, took a sexy photo, and I sent her a message saying, see it when you get it, think about it, and please let me know if you're interested. Before I ended the call, Kay announced, hey, I got it, just give me a minute. After a short pause, she said, I will book a flight tonight for the next available Thursday, Tuesday, and send you my flight information. And we were ready. Hammery and I made love. Peter, that was wonderful. She snorted, barely above a whisper, the table is set and our dinner is ready. And I looked at her in admiration as she sat, and then gracefully walked over to my dresser to pick up her silk robe from where she had left it on the floor. I had to wait a few minutes for the burning sensation in my chest and the tired feeling in my empty lungs to subside before I pulled on my trusty swim trunks and my favorite comfy old washed Marina Jack t-shirt. Then, as if none of this had ever happened, I casually walked into the breakfast room and watched her pour the wine. The rice was cooked to perfection, the celery, onion, and bell peppers were warm and crispy, and the shrimp were plump and juicy in a sweet, tangy garlic sauce that really graced my tongue. Where did you learn to cook like that? I asked, and she just looked at me and smiled. We'll need some things from the store. She announced, "You have quite a selection of herbs and spices, but I'm afraid I've searched your drawer of all the vegetables." And I said, "I like to cook too, so herbs and spices, but we can always eat somewhere else." When she gave me her little, "You've got to be kidding me" look, I said, "Write down what you need and I'll call Publix and deliver it. I know you'll end up needing some personal items as well." I'll do something for her. I thought maybe a debit card with a monthly allowance. And I immediately thought to myself, idiot, that's how it all begins. That evening, after we played in the pool, I walked in, opened the wine cellar door, pulled out the humidor rack, and chose Partagas instead of the Cohibas I had stashed away. I grabbed a rocks glass, 2 cubes, and a bottle of Booker's and headed to sit by the pool. I trimmed the tip, lit it, and as I poured the drink, I looked at her in the sunset and said, "Thank you for a wonderful dinner. I really enjoyed this meal." She looked at me and said, "I'm glad you did. Maybe I can cook for us." After the second glass, I finished my cigar. The next thing I remembered was sleeping with my dear friend Kim James and the warm, friendly yet exciting feeling we enjoyed sharing together about a year before her death. Unfazed, I was touched by the fact that she came back to lay with me. I smelled her familiar sweet scent, felt her warmth, and felt her breath as she whispered right into my ear, "When an attractive, more suitable young woman comes your way, and she does it, do me a favor and reach out. Peter's life is too short, so please live well because there simply isn't enough of it." And I woke up. I wasn't in a hotel room with Kim. It actually took me a moment to realize that I was lying in my bed at home in Oyster Bay. The warmth I felt was from Hammery, who had snuggled up to me somewhere during the night, and what I thought was Kim's breath on my ear was Hammery's soft snoring. Worried about the end of this most pleasant dream, and saddened by the realization that I could not simply return to it, I crawled out of bed, looked at the clock, and saw that it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I quietly went to the summer kitchen, made myself an espresso, and sat waiting for the sun to rise, trying to unravel the mystery and reason for this disturbing dream. Around 5 o'clock, as it began to get light, I was finishing my third drink and wearing only a towel when I decided to sneak back inside and grab my phone. I knew Kay would be up, and I really wanted to talk to her. As I settled back into my lounge chair, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Kay with information about her flight and a sweet closing line. "See you tomorrow," message, and I decided not to call because I wanted to share Hammery with her without casting any trace of ill will. Besides, I thought, it's better that she draws her own conclusions and I don't express my opinion. The morning was pleasantly cool, and I leaned my head back, closed my eyes, and, while deciding where to stop for breakfast on the way to the office, I felt her hug me. Without moving a muscle, I announced, "Hammery, you don't have to do this all the time," and slowly raised my eyes. "Peter, I don't think I need it. It's because I want it." We were sitting in the cell phone lot at the Tampa airport looking at the board when Kay's flight status quickly changed from "in range" to "at gate," and I said to Hammery, "I think you'll really like her." And she gave me a sincere smile. About 15 minutes later, Kay texts, "I have my suitcases and am heading out." And I answer, "I'm coming, white Escalade." When I saw her ahead, I turned on my headlights, pulled into the lane, and got out to greet her and load the bags, and noticed Hammery get out and climb into the back seat to give my guest the front seat. "Hey, look, beautiful, I'm very glad to see you. Thank you for coming." She looked at me with her crystal blue eyes, hugged me tightly, and kissed me right on the lips. As I put her bags on the back hatch, I heard her introduce herself to Hammery, and, to my surprise, she climbed into the back seat and sat next to her. "Hey, ladies, who am I?" "Your driver," I asked playfully. And Kay laughed and replied, "Home, James." And the two girls chatted like best friends on the hour and 20-minute drive back to Sarasota. Kay left her things at the Colonial Gable house that her parents left with me, and after she was settled and they both went to the toilet, I took them to the pub for dinner. My old bartending buddy Scott looked at me favorably when he saw me walk in with a beautiful woman on either arm, and when he recognized Hammery, he beamed from ear to ear and just shook his head. We ate and drank until closing time, and I said to Kay as I walked her to the door, "Tomorrow we'll be there around 9 in the morning to pick you up for the boat ride. Just pack the same things you took last time." Kay smiled, put her arm around my neck, kissed me, and said, "Peter, she's beautiful." And before I realized I was saying this without thinking or even knowing where it was coming from, I heard my voice answer back at her with the words, "Well, she's not you." And my dream about her mother Kim stuck in my head, and in that moment I knew what it meant. Kay looked me straight in the eyes, smiled approvingly, and whispered, "Well, Peter, then she'll just have to be your Dunbar." "Did I do well?" Hammery asked as I climbed back into the seat to buckle up. "You did amazing," I answered her, "simply wonderful." She asked, "Are you okay?" And I looked at her, smiled, and answered, "Yes, Hammery, I think so." Then, as we pulled out of the driveway, I smiled and added, "No rough stuff today. We'll have to get up early in the morning. You'll love my boat." She actually giggled for the first time I heard her do it and replied, "I notice you always like it better in the morning." Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.